Call the meeting to order. I'm going to take a quick roll call vote or a roll call here to make sure we're all present, and I know we are. Bob, here. Brenda?
Here.
Anna?
Here.
Katie?
Here.
Bill?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
Okay. As is our usual custom, we please stand as we say the Pledge of Allegiance, if you're so inclined. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we'll begin by looking for an approval of the agenda. Did you have anything in addition to this lengthy agenda, Jeff?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So look for a motion to approve the agenda as shown.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as shown. It's Katie.
Katie? Second?
I'll second. This is Anna.
Anna, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor of the approval of the agenda as shown, say aye. Oh, shoot.
Aye.
Bob, yes.
It only took one item, Bob.
You know it'll happen again. Bob, yes. Brenda?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
That passes by a 6-0 vote. And yes, it may happen again. Scheduled presenters, we have several, and we're going to lead off with Jeff Sampson in the Truth in Taxation presentation.
Yes, yearly we are required to give a truth in taxation meeting or hearing at the beginning of this board meeting each year. Josh Davison is here to run through the truth in taxation items as it relates to the district. And so Josh, if you want to take this, and I will go slide by slide here for you.
Sure. First slide there, just your kind of where we're at today, the gradients. You can go ahead and to the next one, please. And it's just what the intent of a truth and taxation meeting is, to discuss proposed property taxes levy for taxes table 2021, provide and discuss information on the current budget, and then to give public a reasonable amount of time to comment if they so wish or need to ask questions. You can go to the next slide, please. Again, just kind of where we are. So we'll start out with overview of revenues. Again, what you see here is the 2020-21 current fiscal year budget revenues in the middle column versus last fiscal year's actual amounts. And a few things to kind of notice. Generally, when we consider and discuss big items at the board level, general fund is the main fund that we discuss, is the main operating fund for the district. It also, as you see, is the largest, accounts for the largest amount of revenue in our district. There is a reduction, as you'll see, in the amount of revenue for fiscal year 21. A large part of that is due to, this was put together pre-COVID, so there'll be some dollars in the fiscal year 21 when we do the revision for general fund dollars. And then also, there's a lot of that goes into general fund in terms of ADM count and levy marks where they're set at, but there's just a slight reduction at 1.31% based on what actual revenue was for fiscal year 20 coming into fiscal year 21. And as we said, that was a budget that was preliminary done before COVID amounts. There'll be some CARES dollars that will be put into general fund when we do the revision. The other funds that you'll see, food service is obviously supports our food staff and our service, and then community ed for community service. A lot of the additional expense there as we look at or reduced revenue there is going to be from lack of revenue during the second half of March, all of April and May of not receiving the Canon Kids revenue as we provided emergency care for those that needed it. The debt service is the fund that we receive our funds to pay for our debt service. You can see it as a mortgage payment. That really is set by what our debt requirement is. And we receive about 105% of that amount. And whenever there is an excess of funds in the debt service, that is given back to taxpayers in a form of a reduction. And you'll see as we go to the end to approve the payable 21 levy that we had a debt reduction last year, which is going to make our increase look a little bit higher than maybe it really is. The other funds are trust and agency, scholarship, OPEB trust. We have completed that. There is no longer that fund for us as we go into fiscal year 21 and beyond. That was a $1 million bond at one time and now has been paid off. And we are now self-provided on that. You can go ahead to the next slide, Jeff. This is just kind of showing where does the money come from. And you'll see that the local sources, which is mainly what we're kind of talking about here when we talk levy, about 22% of our revenue comes from local sources. The lion's share, the biggest portion of our revenue comes from state aid, a little over 3/4 of what we receive. You go ahead to the next slide. Start talking about expenditures and where they sit our fiscal year 21 budget versus actual spending last year. A few things of note in the general fund. Again, we talk mainly about the general fund as that's our operating fund. When we put together the budget for fiscal year 21, we had gone through a reduction process and found some areas where we could maybe tighten our belt a little bit. And the idea or the intent there was to work our fund balance up more to where our policy is at. Our unassigned fund balance policy sits that we would like to strive for a balance of 8 to 12%. We are more in the 2% range of the unassigned fund balance. So the idea there was to try to right ourselves in terms of that for our policy. The reason you'll see a significant increase or a higher amount for the actual amount of the general fund for fiscal year 20, again, is some of the COVID expense that was related to items we needed to handle at the end of that fiscal year. So not entirely all of that. Part of it is going to be reductions, is going to be the difference from the actual fiscal year 20 to the budget of 21. So some COVID, a lot of it is based on reductions that we made in order to help us achieve our fund balance policy. In terms of food service, there we came in pretty much on budget. In terms of where we're at, we don't see a huge increase for the budget for expenditures for fiscal year 21. Community service, there's really not an increase in per se in budget there. Some of those items that we looked at would be contractual items that will be metered out between both community ed and general fund. Debt service, again, it's kind of set where our payments are set at one level. We levy for that amount and the revenues offset the expenditures. And then the other funds remaining would be the trust and agency or scholarship fund. And then the two funds, OPEB trust and OPEB debt service, that are no longer on our books for fiscal year 21. You can go to the next one. This one is more for informational, how are the general fund dollars spent? And it just kind of gives a breakdown of, in the district, how our general fund dollars are spent. And if you look kind of in that main middle portion, the regular instruction, vocational instruction, special ed instruction, instructional support services, and pupil support services, that accounts for about 65–70% of what we do in the district, instructing and helping our students to get their education. You go ahead to the next one. And this is just more for visual to kind of see where those expenditures really end up bulking to. And as we talk about in a district, in most districts across the state, salaries and wages and employee benefits account for the majority of our expenses. It's just under about 70% of our general fund dollars are spent on salary, wages, and benefits. Go ahead to the next one. So I'll start to talk about the school district levy and what we'll be looking to approve for tonight, the levy 2020 payable 2021. So this will be for the fiscal year 22 schools budget. Can you go ahead to the next one, please? It just kind of shows where your school taxes will be spent. In the general fund, the biggest portion of our levy is going to go for general instructional programs. We've got an operating referendum that's in there. That would be largely general fund. You should go down to community ed. That's a small portion of our levy, but it is part of our levy nonetheless. And then debt service is really a big portion to pay off projects and improvements we've had done to the building over the years. Go ahead to the next. And this will be the portion that the school board will be asked to certify tonight and approve for us to send to the counties in the state of Minnesota. And what this slide shows is our actual levy, 19 pay 20, versus our proposed tonight levy. And just kind of talk through real quickly about the variances in the general fund. You'll see there is an increase there. Part of it is how the formulas work at the state and how it's metered out through ADMs. There's an increase in there. Community ed is pretty stable where it's at, even though you see the increase is 6%, is a small increase in relation to the amount of funds that they receive. The debt service, the reason for the larger increase there is, as we talked about earlier, last year we had an excess of revenue. We do a pretty good job in our county of collecting on taxes. So when the county sets to receive a levy of 105%, we're doing a pretty good job of covering that. Whenever there's an excess, we're able to give those funds back to taxpayers. So last year there's a reduction in debt service, which caused our overall levy to be decreased. This year we're back to the normal levels of our debt service levy. So you see the increase in debt service, which ends up pushing our total levy increased up as well. So overall, our total levy increase, all funds will be just over 9.25%. And the last page is going to be the portion where the school board would approve the levy if it so chooses. If there are any questions, I can certainly do my best to answer or get answers for you.
Could you remind me a little bit about that OPEB? At one point in time, we levied the taxpayers for 10 years so that we wouldn't take that OPEB money out of our general fund, as I recall.
Yep. So
now that it's been sunsetted, where are we now? Right.
So, and that is going to be a portion of the increase in the general fund levy, as we're able to now levy for some pay-as-you-go OPEB costs, which we weren't able to do so in the past because we didn't have a sunset clause in our contracts. Sunsetting meaning that we're not paying large amounts in perpetuity, so to speak, for other post-employment educational benefit or other employment benefits. Excuse me. So what we had done about 10 years ago, we were able to at a one-time take a levy out without voter approval. Board was able to approve this. Went out for $1 million levy for other post-employment benefits with the intention of having that help offset some of our pay-as-you-go OPEB costs, and in the meantime, working towards contracts that had sunset clauses in them. That has occurred. We no longer have the OPEB trust revenue in, but we also don't have the debt anymore. What we are able to do though is, as part of our levy process, levy for some of those pay-as-you-go OPEB costs. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it just seems like it's out of one pocket into another, so to speak.
Yeah, in a way it is. I guess where the intention was at the start, from maybe the state of Minnesota's perspective, was to get the sunset clauses into contracts.
Yep, yeah. Other questions for Josh? Okay. Anyone else like to discuss the truth in taxation presentation? Anybody else have any statements? Otherwise, we'll move down to school perceptions. Everybody ready to move forward? There is no action on that. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, Josh. Okay, Jeff, school perceptions.
Yes, I believe Sue Peterson is on here, and Sue Peterson is the school perceptions aficionado, if you will. She is the one that conducted our survey, and she is here to present the results tonight of the district survey that went out.
Okay.
All right, Jeff, I took over this screen, so I think I'm driving now.
Okay, be careful. Don't put us in the ditch.
Lady driver, hold on. All right, good evening, everyone. As Jeff said, my goal is to go over the results of your recent community survey. I was with you in 2015, and we've been in business since 2002. So some of you, if you were on the board at that time, may be familiar with our work. But our goal as a company is really to help educational leaders like yourselves gather, organize, and use data to make strategic decisions. So we do that most often in the form of gathering data through surveys. And we've worked with now about 700 school districts as they're in situations like yours, updating their strategic plan and really considering a referendum process. So your survey was conducted in mid-November through early December of this year. Each residential household within the district was mailed that 8-page paper survey. We've built a proprietary website, so folks that wanted to log on to the website could do so by including that unique 16-digit alphanumeric access code that ensures data integrity. We had 570 people complete the survey. Of those, 123 were mailed back to us in paper. We've got an office in Slinger, Wisconsin, near Milwaukee, and we have a team of people that enter surveys. So just a comparison, if you were curious, in 2015, when I worked with you, you had 418 responses to the survey. So certainly we saw an increase in people responding to the survey this time. We asked folks who took the survey to tell us a bit about themselves. We do this because we want to make sure all subsets of your community are represented. We also do it because we want to be able to correlate your data with what would happen in a typical election. So we're looking at your data through a couple of different lenses tonight. One of them just in general, where people are at when you kind of think strategic planning. The other one we consider referenda. So here you can see we asked folks to tell us their age. This is really the breakout that we want. We know that those 36 to 45-year-olds are likely parents of school-age kids. Also, the majority likely of your employees. So not surprised that that was the highest. We asked folks if they lived within your school district. 90% reported that they do. 10% do not. When we're looking at tax tolerance or support for referenda, I will remove those non-resident respondents. So who is that if we mailed the survey out? We also provided an opportunity for all school district employees and parents to complete the survey. Likely you have people that work for you that don't live in the district. Similarly, you may have families that choice in or a non-primary custody parent who responded to the survey. We asked folks to tell us where it is that they live within the district. Again, the goal of this is to correlate your data with election data. That means that if Jeff and you all were to look at a previous election and you said what percentage of people came from where, you likely would see that this data should correlate. So about 40% are in the city of Cannon Falls, 19% within that township, and then those other small percentages there. That 8% of others is likely folks that said that they didn't live within the district. We wanted to be able to pull the data apart. If you want to look at just ag landowners, 21% of those who responded to the survey reported that they own ag land within the district. 18% of the respondents, or 90% of those who responded to the survey, work for the school district, and 332 reported that they have children attending school in your district. We said, if you've got school-aged children, what school or schools do they attend? Here you can see 56% reported they've got kids at the elementary school, 44% at your high school, 41% at your middle school, 8% in the preschool program, and then small percentages making other educational choices for their children. Obviously, folks could choose more than one, hence the percentages are greater than 100. We also wanted people to correlate the relationship that they have with the district. So to start thinking, even if I don't have kids in the schools or I don't work for the district, I have some sort of a connection to the school district. So we gave folks a variety of things to check as far as other relationships that they have. You can see those there. Additionally, just remember on the back end, if you want to pull the data apart and just look at graduates of the district or folks that volunteer in the district or community and business partners, you have the ability to do that. The first section of the survey then, of the meat and potatoes of the survey, was about achieving excellence. We asked folks to tell us how we were doing in the following areas. What these numbers you'll see here are simple averages. If everyone had said great, you'd see a 4. If everyone said poor, you would see a 1. So now we've taken this data, we've removed your school district employees because we're just not looking at them in this report. You certainly have access to that data in the portal, but we wanted to look at kind of 2 groups of people as we reflect on how people think the work of the school district is. The far column, those are your parents, those are your customers. They're invested in what's happening in the schools. They've got a lot of skin in the game. So we've rank ordered the statements according to that group. The other group is a group we call your non-parents. So they don't work for the district and they also don't have children in your schools. Again, you can see if anything is above a 3, certainly leaning towards that great and good. So really things looking very positive. Parents saying the district does a nice job of providing a safe learning environment, ensuring class sizes are available to meet students' academic needs, maintaining facilities using technology to enhance the learning experience, and a nice welcoming learning environment, really scoring the highest. So where do we pause? You know, I always say things that fall below a 2.5, if that's our middle marker, things below that, we say, oh, those are leaning towards the fair and poor. And what do you see? Only 1, and that's your general citizens at a 2.35 with spending tax dollars wisely. I can also tell you I've yet to do a presentation where that hasn't been the lowest scoring item from that category. So sometimes it's about folks just understanding how tax dollars are spent. So the presentation just ahead of me was timely. We asked one overall satisfaction question. How satisfied are you with the school district? Here we can see really a very positive nod from both your parents and general citizens. Our benchmark is 15% dissatisfaction. So if we add that not satisfied and very unsatisfied together, we always want to make sure that that falls below a 15%, or that gives us pause. You're sitting at 11 and 9%. That looks really good to us. We always know there's going to be a few people that have some slight dissatisfaction. But overall, really, folks are giving you a nod. They're satisfied with the work that you're doing. We then went in and asked folks to tell us, how do you feel our programs and the services are doing? I'm going to go through a couple slides quick because I want to get to the gap analysis. So we then asked folks how valuable are a variety of programs and services that the district offers, and how is it that we're doing? Again, simple averages there with both of those. But what we're most interested in is that gap analysis. So the value that people place on things versus the performance. How is it that we are doing? And so here, what do we see? We can see that a small gap analysis, or people really saying that value and performance are fairly close as far as your performing arts and the visual arts there, athletics, co-curriculars, and then at that negative 0.51 for academic electives. But that greatest gap among parents sits in financial literacy, career exploration, and then those life skills. So character, citizenship, leadership opportunities. So many times when I get to this point, I say, let's not get anxious that these are things we're not doing well. It's an opportunity to reflect and say, well, these are things that people think are really important, and they may not be aware of our performance. So you may be doing a lot of things around personal finance, but your parents aren't aware of just all of those items. So again, this is kind of a reflection on programs and services themselves, as well as our communication. Shouldn't surprise us when we kind of look at those bottom two. Most parents, what's your biggest concern? I don't want my 28-year-old living in my basement, racking up credit card bills and not sure what he is going to do for the rest of his life. General citizens, ironically, they rated those exact same 3 items with the greatest gap. So that financial literacy, career exploration, and those life skills, and then not far behind that CTE. So again, I say this is really a chance for the district to say, how do we share those happenings and what's going on in the district and making those connections so that everyone is aware of it. Regarding district communications, we asked folks, how would you like to receive information from the school district? Your parents are represented in blue. They're saying emails, we use the website, utilize technology, those text messages. Your general citizens look to the Cannon Falls Beacon as the primary way that they receive information from the school district or about the school district, and as well as going to your website and looking to district newsletters and emails. So again, how are we sharing information with the Beacon? How can we ensure that they're telling the good news of what the district is doing as far as teaching financial literacy, preparing students, giving them those citizenship, leadership, character ed opportunities, and letting them explore careers. So we did the same thing with a gap analysis as far as what information is important for you to know. So we see that here from those 2 groups. And then we said, how informed do you feel? So again, I'm going through these couple slides quick because it's that gap analysis that's really the most important when we think about what's important for us to know about versus how informed do we feel. So things that really people are saying, yep, I'm aware of what's going on with athletics and music and the arts and those special events. Those are easy things for your media to cover. But what are areas where your parents are saying we want to know more? So it shouldn't surprise us that career exploration, those opportunities, mental health support, those academic initiatives, as well as a better understanding of district finances and planning. So really that previous gap analysis and this piece are 2 areas, again, when we're making those connections and thinking, what information is it people need to know, want to know, and that's important. Those general citizens, again, you see special events, athletics, those co-curriculars, music and the arts. That's important, but they do feel fairly informed of those things. General citizens are ranked highest as far as that gap in district finances and planning. That's important, especially when we go on to talk about referenda, those career opportunities, school safety and security. So really understanding the systems you have in place, what needs still exist, and opportunities to support the school. So volunteer opportunities there. Lots of good information. So then we moved on in the survey and we wanted to let folks know that the district has the technology plan that's really guided the work of the district to ensure those 21st century workforce skills. And that in order to do that, you need that technology infrastructure, you need devices for students, as well as classroom technology to support that. In your current budget, really could use some additional support in order to ensure that that happens. The district has said for $400,000 per year, that's what would be needed to fully implement the technology plan. And we were looking at being able to maintain this funding for the next 10 years. We then let people know in that slide how much of an increase that would be to their property values based on the type and the value of the property or properties that they own. So we asked the question, based on these tax impacts, would you support a tax levy? So again, now we're looking at all resident respondents. We've removed that 10% of folks that don't live in the district. And 58% of those who responded said, yep, I indeed support the district's potential technology levy should it go to the polls. 19% said no, and 23% undecided. Now, remember early in the presentation, I talked about the fact that we wanted to be able to correlate this data with what happens in an election. So what we know based on how people, people told us who they were when they responded to the survey, we know that this all resident respondents is overrepresented of school district employees and parents of school-aged children. So what I mean by that is more of those people responded to the survey statistically than would go to the polls. So therefore, I need to pull the data apart into 3 mutually exclusive groups and look at each of those individually. So then first we looked at your school district employees that live in the district. 54% of your employees said that they would support that technology levy. 18% said no, with 28% undecided. If I was sitting outside of a polling place at a typical school district election, and as people left, I asked them 2 questions. The first question I asked was, do you work for the school district? What I would find out is about 1% of the people that go to the polls work for the school district. Again, that's why we're pulling the data apart. So when we look at this group, in essence, we say, oh, this is 1% of the folks at the polls. Important for us to know that school district employees are supportive because they've got an important voice in the community. Your employees are, your community members aren't calling Jeff every day. They're just talking to general employees of the district. But again, these folks don't determine what happens at the polls. If as folks left, I asked a second question and I said, do you have children attending school in the school district? What I would find out is about 25% of the people would answer yes to that question. Therefore, when we look at parent residents, we give this kind of like a 25% weighting, if you will, as far as their support if we want to know something's going to be successful at the polls. So what we see here by your parents, strong support. 64% of your parents saying that they would indeed support the levy, 13% saying no, and 23% undecided. That means that 75% of the people going to the polls would answer no to both of those questions. No, I don't work for the school district, and no, I don't have kids attending school in your schools. So what that tells me is that these people make up the majority of folks at the polls. They ultimately determine what happens in an election. So here you can see 45% support for that technology levy, 34% telling us no, with 21% undecided. Now you might be saying, well, what happens to those undecided folks? Based on our research, we've been doing this for almost 20 years. What we found is that a third of the folks, or 7%, will likely move to a yes. 2/3 are just too Minnesota nice to tell us no right away. So therefore, as you look at this, you can say, okay, I've got about 52% support from your general citizens. So if we think about that math, again, 45% support from 75% of the people, those general citizens, 64% support from our parents, who make up 25% of the voters. When we do the math and remember the order of operations from 5th grade math, we can see that you're sitting just at that bubble at 49.75%. Again, I said you'd likely carry a third of those undecided voters. So you pick up 7% of those general citizens, 7% of your parents. And now you can see that bumps up to that 56.75% support. Based on this, I would say it makes sense to go for it. Certainly, you're going to want to continue educating people on those technology needs and how those funds would be used. That'll ensure that that third of undecideds move along to a yes. But we do feel that this would likely have a success at the polls. Then we went on to introduce some facility projects. ISG had been in your buildings doing a facility assessment, and your district had really looked at that report and identified potential projects as part of the district's long-range facility plan. We explained to folks each of those needs, gave kind of a bit more of a, how did we get to this point, and then the cost to address those. So again, you can see we had the HVAC, your exterior site repairs, renovating your science and CTE spaces, some interior finishes, as well as those outdoor athletic space updates and the potential of adding seating and turf to that outdoor athletic stadium. So for each of these, we said to folks, would you support this if the funding was on a referendum? So these again now are simple averages. If everyone had said yes, you'd see a 10. If they said no, you would see a 1. So that first column there represents all resident respondents. Again, we've taken that data, we've pulled it apart into those 3 mutually exclusive groups. But we've now learned that the most important group is that furthest column, those non-parent, non-staff members. Remember, they make up the majority of the folks at the polls, in fact, 75%. Your parents, they're second important, making up 25% of the folks at the polls. So based on this, what do we see? Your general citizens are saying highest priority is repairing that building exterior, addressing that site drainage, taking care of your HVAC system needs at the high school, with renovating your science and CTE classrooms and labs right behind it. If we figure that 5's kind of the middle mark there, then the rest of those projects fall below it from those general citizens. Your parents really saying all of the things are important, with everything above a 5, but certainly you can see dancing close to that 5 with that additional seating and turf at the athletic stadium with your parents. So now we kind of know the rank order of projects, and it comes down to one thing, comes down to money. So often I say it's where 2 lines intersect. We put the projects in order, and then we say, well, what's our community's tax tolerance? So completing all of the projects was going to cost the district $20.49 million. We created 3 amounts to test, so a 14, a 17, and a $20.49 million bond. Did the same thing, let folks know the impact of the various property or properties that they own. Then we asked the question, how much of a tax increase would you support through a bond referendum, assuming the projects included were acceptable to you? I like to refer to this as the mind-numbing slide. It's the most important in the presentation, so I do want to make sure you understand it. If you focus your attention on that bottom bar, you will see that 31% of the residents who responded to the survey were all in. They want to complete all of the projects. They're willing to accept the tax increase for that $20.49 million bond. 12% of the resident respondents said, I'm not in at 20.49, but I could accept a $17 million bond and the tax increases that go along with it. I make an assumption that since the tax increase is less for the $17 million bond than it is for the $20.49 million bond, I can say that 43% of the resident respondents would support a $17 million bond. So I can bring those $20.49 million supporters along with me. So I need to continue along until we pass that red line, which is the 50% mark, because I know 50% plus 1 gets me a win or tells me I have majority support. So therefore, as we look at this, you can see that $14 million is really the tax tolerance of all resident respondents. However, what I explained earlier in the presentation is we can't look at that bottom bar because it's overrepresented of school district employees and then parents of school-aged children who, as we can see, are extremely supportive of schools most often and of school bonds. But rather, you need to focus your attention on the top bar, those general citizens, because they make up the majority of the folks at the polls. When we do that, what we see is you say 20% of those folks are all in at the 20.49, 28% are in at the $17 million mark. And when we add another 13%, you've really got 41% support from those general citizens for the $14 million project. You've got greater support from your parents at that $14 million mark. In fact, as we add those three numbers up, the 36, the 14, and the 12, you've got 62% support from your parents, who make up 25% of the folks at the polls. So we start to ask ourselves, do we indeed have a tax tolerance of $14 million? So what do we see? We do the math the same way I explained it when we talked about the technology levy. Doing such, we can see that you've got about 46.25% support for that $14 million bond. Therefore, we would say we want to drop that bond question, at least the initial question, down from the $14 million. So, okay, how low do we go? Does it mean we need to drop it down to 13? Do we need to drop it down to 12? So now we say, okay, we go back and we really look at these projects and say, all right, what was our community's support for the various things? So we see really those top three had great support. That puts us closer to that $14 million mark. So we might need to say we're going to tackle these projects, perhaps, look at your CTE and science. And is there a way that you can siphon off a portion of that perhaps becomes a second question or is pushed out into something we can do later? And our recommendation would likely be that you want to land at least an initial bond question, probably closer to an $11 or $12 million project. Because you're close, you're just not quite there. And with that, I will take a breath, see if there's anything I missed you want me to add. I know you've got some ISG folks on the call if they want to add anything. Otherwise, I'm happy to open it up for questions.
No, I think you did a great job in explaining it, but I've been through your presentations before, so I can't say that I am a novice at it. So you might get a few questions on the presentation. I guess my question would be for the bond question, just to reiterate, you talked about 1 and 2 question bonds, about maybe a first question of 11 to 12 million, but the potential of a second question. What does that look like for some of those other areas? I mean, is there any hope for that, or should we not even consider it?
Well, you can see you're close at the $14 million mark, but I don't want to risk the whole project trying to go for 14, because I think you're over the line. I think you're over the threshold. But I do think there could be things that the community may work for. So, as you look at items that had support, and if there's a group that says, these outdoor athletic areas, this is important to us. And so, we can take care of maybe the finishes a different way or over time. And we want to see, could we go for a second question that might bump you up? So if you went for 12 and then 2, or maybe that the combined total is just slightly over the 14, but that group would have to, those advocates for whatever that is are going to have to work hard to make that happen. My best and most recent example, at least in Minnesota, would be if you think back, if you read anything about the Rochester referendum not long ago, but I had that same conversation in front of their board, and I said, you've got 162 million, that's safe. But if we add those swimming pools on, that extra 9 million, that could take you over the threshold. And so I'd said, let those folks sink or swim on their own. And so in Rochester, they pulled those pools out as a second question on their own. And those advocates for wanting that really had to work hard to get the word out. But certainly we didn't want to risk all of those projects if we were just a bit too far, too high, at least in the tax tolerance. So to answer your question, if you decide those outdoor athletic facilities become that second piece, because you can adjust some other pieces, or you decide you're going to pull out science classrooms or CTE spaces, and one of those things is going to stand on its own, you'd want that first question to land, 10, 12, 11, 12 million dollars. And then I think you could do a second question that dances closer to or on or around that $14 million when you combine them together.
Sue, this is Bob Brentnell. What is your historical accuracy on surveys such as this?
Good question. So we're not an advocacy company, so we would tell you that we don't collect data on our successes, but the data is highly, highly predictable. So what do I mean by that? We had, I think, 18 questions on the ballot in November, and of them, 14 or 15 passed. And the 3 that didn't, we predicted wouldn't find success. So just because someone uses our survey and then goes out, it doesn't mean they're going to be successful. Why? Because you have a choice to listen to the tax tolerance data or not. So Byron, Minnesota, working with them again, we told them their tax tolerance was around $28 million. If you remember, Byron went out for 54 million for their question. They didn't have success. So I maintain our data is predictive. And we said, okay, when their chart that looks like this at that $54 million mark sat at about 32% support. So if you went back and looked at what happened in Byron, well, at that amount, they had about 30% that supported it. So the data was predictive, but not a win. Over the years, that's what we found, that we have superintendents that'll text me the night of elections or the next day, and they'll say, I don't know what to tell you, Peterson. You were 0.25% or 1% off. So it usually is highly predictive of what will happen in an election. And really you as a board have decisions to make of what you listen to and what you don't.
Other questions for Sue? Comments? Jeff, would you like to jump in at all here?
Sure. If there's no other questions, we can certainly let Sue go here. But I think the board can, look through the survey results at their leisure over the holidays, and then we can jump back into conversations around this starting at the next board meeting. But I think it's appropriate to at least possibly look at scheduling finance and facility committee meetings to discuss these results as well.
I would agree.
Jeff, will we also get the raw data from the survey? Because I know this is a pretty condensed report.
Sue, do you have the raw data?
Yep. So what we can do is give you back-end access to the portal. So that allows you to see all of the data. So Jeff can just send me your email addresses and then we would give you that access. The other thing that we'll be in the process of doing is putting together a comment analysis that looks, we go through all of the comments and organize those for you. I intentionally don't talk about the comments tonight because we cannot quantify comments. So I need you to think data first, usually for about a week. I want you to kind of mull the data over in your head. And then you bring in the comments to kind of fill in the rest of the story. So we'll send that as well. It's important you understand how to analyze the data which is why I spend the time with you tonight. And then certainly you can have access to the portal so that you can play around with it and slice and dice the data as you see fit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sue, what I'll probably do is give you the board members' email addresses, if that works.
Just send those to me in email, and then you'll each get an email invitation from our system inviting you to log in and access the data.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sue.
You bet.
Can I have control back of the meeting? I should have it.
I think I gave it to you.
Yep, very good.
Good. Okay, moving along. Next scheduled presenter, I'd asked the AD to allow us to have some booster clubs in, just so we can review what's going on in their lives and we can stay close to them. They do provide us a lot of positive financial and other areas. So the next person up is Randy Hartle from the Band Boosters. Randy?
Yeah, I had on mute, Bob. Yeah, I'm representing the Band Boosters. I'm actually, I've stepped down from the presidency there now. Robin McManus is taking over. Basically what we try to do, or what we want to do, is we want to purchase like instruments and stuff like that that are going to be around for a long period of time and affect a lot of students. Right now, for instance, we're looking at replacing some of the marching band tubas that have been, I think they're from the 1950s. And so these are kind of rare things that, you don't really want to go spend a lot of money on as a school. So we try to pick up some of those odd type of instruments. We just purchased a piccolo for them. We've replaced a couple of amps and things like that. So right now we're looking at some of the cabinets that they have in the music room from an acoustical standpoint and stuff like that. So, but our goal is to just provide things that wouldn't be normal type of stuff. And we try to provide bigger things that are going to be used for students for a lot of years to come. So we also are called the Band Boosters. However, we're trying to get more into the performing arts type of boosters. We have done some of that. We're working some with the musical, obviously until COVID kind of hit here, and then also with the choir department. And so the performing arts is really kind of our focus. We have two basic fundraisers throughout the year. One we just wrapped up with Christmas trees, and we sell those down here at Althoff's and at Ace. And those guys were awesome through the COVID stuff here, where, I mean, they actually collected a lot of the money and stuff because hard to get kids and stuff out there in any type of group. So a lot of parents helped out, and both the hardware stores did a really, really nice job. We sell swags and wreaths there as well, and trees. So that's our primary fundraiser. And then we do one other one that's really kind of a neat one. It's called the Slice of Jazz. That's in Marchish. And what that is our the jazz band plays, the jazz choir comes in and sings, and the steel pans band performs also. And we do a live auction there, and also a bag silent auction. And so along with that, of course, you get some pie. It's called a Slice of Jazz because we do pie and brownies and a couple of those fun things too. So, and that's a really fun thing. The students love to do it, and the parents love to come to it, and it's a really nice community type event. And that's another thing we kind of focus a little. We like the community type stuff too, working with Ace Althoff's. Students get down there, they work with people that are buying and stuff like that. So some of that community type involvement too is the stuff that we like. And then we do scholarship and a few other things as well, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. So any questions at all for me?
Thank you for checking in, Randy.
Good to see you, Bob. Merry Christmas to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Next up is Dawn Banks representing the football
Hi.
boosters.
I'm Dawn Banks, and
Hi,
I'm the current president, just my first year. So we have really just looked to support the football program, student athletes, coaches, helping to enhance the program and providing resources and opportunities. to support the football program. And we, there's some things we do consistently throughout the year. Throughout the years, like we organize and run the concessions at the games, and we purchase and paint the fields with the athletes go down and help out some of the boosters to do that. And then over the years, kind of things change as the needs come up from the coaches or the program. So we've helped to fund some positions to hire coaches at the lower level, junior high, JV, purchased equipment for safety, helmets, tackling, pads, other equipment such as that. And then some of the things that the coaches have kind of requested to help them, you know, headsets, end zone camera, huddle, sideline, replay system, strength and speed. And then recently we just purchased some jackets for the team, the winter sideline jackets for the team. And then we like to try for like the furthest away game to provide a coach bus to transport the team, and other little things like food for post games for those away games, or food for the Saturday film times with the team. And then we do a scholarship as well for seniors at the end of the year. So we do the concessions is one of the fundraisers that is probably just not a huge one, but we also do, we didn't this year based on COVID, but we have a raffle that's kind of our big one, where the team, each player on the team gets 4 tickets to sell, and it's kind of changed over the years, but most recently just been a cash, you know, monetary win. But the guys go out and sell 4 tickets. And then we do a community service-based fundraiser that is really fun because it gets out in the community, but it's, you know, the football alumni and players' parents volunteer to provide a service to the residents on Lake Billsby. We put in and take out docks for the homeowners. So that's been a fun one. And I know, you know, past alumni that now are, that live here, that have kids maybe growing up in the community or are starting their families. It's a time for them to kind of give back to the program. And, you know, we have 4 board members. We have, you know, we always are super lucky to have 8 to 10 super active members, but we're open and always willing to have people join and be a part of our group. So that's kind of it.
That's kind of a lot. Thank you. Any questions for Dawn concerning the football boosters? Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
Melinda Sabelko, she gave us a Bomber Dance Team Parent Association handout as well. Very, very in depth. Melinda?
Hi, I'm Melinda Sabelko. I am a first-year president for our dance team parent association. Essentially, our group is more focused on that gap of needs for our dancers. Pretty much it's the funds that the school can't cover. So you can go on to the next slide. So those funds, the gap funds, typically are the supplemental costume funding. When we talk about costumes for our dance girls, essentially we're looking in the upwards of $300 per student. And that's typically per class. So we do jazz and kick at our school. And each of those costumes are made to fit each of our students. So that is an extra cost each year that we usually supplement the additional funding for that. When our girls moved to the CCC, we helped with the development of that studio, and that included the mirrors and dance floors there. Last year, our girls attended Just for Kicks camp. So we do pay our coaching staff to attend that camp. Essentially, it is a continuing education benefit to those coaches. We have also done the supplementary salary to be able to provide additional coaches. That allows us to have more one-on-one coaching with our dance girls. In addition to that, one of our biggest fundraisers that happens is the photo fundraisers. So often during the summer and the winter, you'll see our dance girls out there taking pictures, either at like basketball or soccer. But some of the supplies to be able to do that fundraising are not covered through the school account. So we do supplement that part. We do have our own website, so we cover those fees. Another thing outside of money is the volunteer hours that happen. If anybody's ever been to a dance meet, it's a lot different than a typical basketball game or just a football game. We have very, very large meets with many schools that attend. So we look at the upwards of 50 volunteers just to make an event run. And that is all come together and organized within the PA. We too also provide spaghetti feeds. I think it sounds like kind of what Dawn spoke to for the football team. We pay for dinners when it's away for a long ways away. We do coach buses for them when they are far away or state or something like that. We also do state activities. So the PA gets together and decorates all the rooms and provides little gifty fun things for the girls. Something I don't have on here too is a scholarship. She mentioned that we do a scholarship for our seniors each year. Let's see. That's just kind of some of the high level stuff. Does anybody have any questions?
You've done well. We appreciate the handout as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys.
Okay, that was more of a discussion item. We'll move down to reports and communication. Is Crescent here or available to give us a report?
Yep, I'm here.
You're looking around, Randy. You don't see her right away. Crescent, the floor is yours. Do you have anything for us?
Okay, well, there's not too much to report on. The one act play has started up and they're being full virtual. So hopefully those will work out and hopefully we get some sports going here too.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, not much.
Other than that, I don't have. Yep.
Thank you. Committee reports. Does anyone have any committee meetings that they've been to that have been, they'd like to make a report on? No one?
Nope.
Okay. Administrative board reports. Excuse me. Elementary school, do you have anything for us, Jen?
No, not too much. Just a couple of shout outs that I wanted to make sure some were recognized. A huge shout out to our emergency care staff and our preschool staff and our special ed staff who have been in the building. And I just thank them for their tireless effort, trying to create an atmosphere for kids to be engaged while we're in this distance period. A thank you as well to the rest of my teachers who are continuing to build the plane while it's in the air. I feel like that plane is like somewhat built where we can kind of take some deep breaths. So the teachers are doing amazing at distance teaching right now. And I commend them for their effort and continuing to keep their students engaged even through a distance. And then just the last one, our PTO put together some Christmas holiday crafts for students that are able to be picked up in the vestibule, and gotten some feedback on those that there are lots of happy parents to have a little something for kids to do over the holiday break. So I know there's still plenty there. So if you haven't gotten one yet, parents, please make sure you do so. So thank you to the PTO for doing that. That was super fun in light of not being able to have our normal Christmas gathering. So, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Hodges, are you with us? Middle school, high school tech?
Yep.
You've got a handout.
Not a whole lot You know, we are just, you know, following our distance learning plan. Seems to be going fairly well, I think, from what I'm hearing. We're excited to have kids back in the classroom, though. That's what we really want to see ultimately. Yeah, so things are going well. Teachers are doing well, and things seem to be going well.
Okay. Thank you. Please, board members, if you want to refer to that handout that Mr. Hodges gave us, it's in your packet. Thank you. Reed, you're on.
Hi, everybody. Just a couple pieces here that's in addition to what I put on my report. We're still waiting. Obviously, the high school league, the governor allows to come back January 4th, depending on what we decide here locally. Biggest thing that we're waiting here on now is once we come back, we're waiting to hear out from the high school league and MDH as to what our first date of competition would look like. So we do not know that at this time. So if we do come back to activities at January 4, as of right now, we do not know when our first games would be. So that's going to be the challenging piece to that. We also don't know what that guidance is going to look like. So some of that speculation could be in regards to whether spectators, masks, what that looks like. So once that comes out, hopefully I have another high school league meeting tomorrow. We'll get that reported here, and we'll roll with it based off what gets decided locally to allow us to return. Other than that, I'm sure you probably have more questions for me, more that I should answer. If you have,
we may refer to you down the road here.
Sure.
Tonight.
That's what I was figuring.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any immediate questions for Reed? Okay. Operations and maintenance, is Dave on by any chance? He gave us a short synopsis, I think, somewhere in here.
Yeah, his report is in there, but I don't see him on the meeting after letting in a bunch of people. So.
Yep. Nor do I. Please read Dave's input that's on his report. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, my report is as written there on the different agenda items, but I also want to kind of give an update from the COVID side of things. I attached some of the communications that we've sent out recently. Last week, the state of Minnesota and governor came out and announced quite a few different things and sent out some guidance to us. And then they abruptly changed it this morning at 7 o'clock, right before our COVID advisory committee meeting. So we're still trying to decipher that. And the idea is to put out district-wide family and staff communication tomorrow on some of those items. So we want families to be aware that that information will be coming out, revolving around getting back in from distance learning and into in-person learning. The intent is still to start hybrid learning again, K through 12 on January 11th, as we originally planned, unless our numbers skyrocket over the Christmas break. And so we're asking families to please adhere to social distancing and masking and washing hands, and trying to be smart about what we're doing here so that we can get the kids back into school. The governor also released guidance on shortening up quarantine if you meet certain specifications, and that information was sent out to families last week as well. So we're pretty excited about that happening. Other than that, that's pretty much what we have in the hopper here. Is our focus in the COVID advisory committee is really on getting our kids back into school and making sure that we do it safely for our staff and for our students. And that is all I have, unless you have questions.
How does Goodhue County look in general on their COVID issues?
The trend line data from approximately mid-November is a pretty good steady downward turn of numbers, which is a positive thing. Again, we've gotten through Thanksgiving, and now we just need to get through the next holiday period of Christmas and New Year's, and hopefully that continues to aim downward from that standpoint. We were in the 90s today, when I should say yesterday, because they didn't update it today when I had looked at it later this afternoon. So it's a good sign. It's better than being up around 150 or 160 where we were in mid-November.
Mm-hmm. Questions for Jeff? I'm sure he'll be addressing some of these statements a little bit later on the agenda. Okay, moving down to public input. This is an opportunity for people in the community that wish to speak about issues. A speaker may not address criticism toward an individual district employee during public input. We generally give between 3 and 5 minutes, depending on how many people would like to speak. In the event that there's multiple people speaking on the same topic, we would really ask that you find a representative to speak on behalf of several, which makes for continuity. So is there anyone that's on right now who would like to speak to the school board and administration about a topic of concern that they may have?
Bob, we did have somebody ask to have some student representatives give some input about returning to participation. And so we do have somebody from girls basketball, dance, boys basketball, and wrestling here tonight. At least I'm hoping that they're on. Belle Freeberg for girls basketball, Amelia Quayle for dance, Marcus Banks and Cam Dickey for boys basketball, and Gavin Peterson for wrestling. I can't tell if they're on here.
I think I saw Marcus.
Yeah, and I've seen most of them come in, Reed.
Okay, so if Belle is first based off the order, if that would be okay, if you could take a couple minutes just to kind of give your thoughts about return to participation for your program, please.
Okay, hi, I'm Belle Freeberg. I'm a senior at Cannon Falls High School, and I'm representing girls basketball. I've been playing basketball with the same group of girls for as long as I can remember, and the thought of not being able to play my last year is pretty sad. I'm aware that the times we are in are tough, but I know that if we were given the chance to play this winter, the coaches will do everything they can to ensure everyone's safety. I played soccer this fall, and the precautions taken allowed for everyone to feel safe. We wore masks as much as we could, and we avoided close contact and followed social distancing requirements. Although it wasn't ideal, we took what we were allowed, and we made the best of it. The same thing could happen this winter. All of us girls basketball players are prepared to mask up and get back into the gym. Just like everyone else, we feel like we are getting everything taken away from us, but since Governor Walz is giving us the option to play, Cannon Falls should do everything possible to get our winter athletes back in action. As a Bomber athlete and student, I feel safe enough given the circumstances, and I can only hope that I'm not going to lose yet another important part of my high school experience. Us girls will respect the decision made, but we are all hoping we can get back into the gym soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Belle. Reed, I'm going to look to you to just filter.
Yep. Thanks, Belle. Amelia with dance.
Hi, my name is Amelia Quayle, and I'm a senior captain of the Cannon Falls Bomber dance team. Although some may view this program as just another after-school activity to participate in, it means much more to myself and the girls who spend hours in the CCC gym every day perfecting our routines and skill technique. It is practically our second family. And starting on November 30th, as our close-knit team switched to online practices via Zoom, our program encountered some new obstacles that it has never faced in its 23 years of existence. Practicing online is extremely tedious. Poor Wi-Fi connections, frozen screens, lagging sounds, and lack of proper practice space are just a few of the issues our team has come across in the first few weeks of online practice. Technology issues aside, though, the mental health of my fellow peers on the team has also been compromised by the switch to online practices. Living during a pandemic is tough enough as it is, and it can become even more dreadful when our only outlet is restricted. Currently, we are lucky enough to practice online, but it is in no means the same as in-person practices. We want to dance and we want to see our friends face to face and not over Zoom screens. Obviously, ensuring the physical safety of our community by following all the governor's guidelines is top priority, but we believe that the mental health and well-being of the participants of this program should also be accounted for. Recently, Governor Walz announced that he approves high school sports resuming on January 4th, and we'd be ever so grateful if the school board would allow us to go back to in-person practices on this day too, with masks and hands, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Marcus and Cam, you're up.
I think that it's important getting back into sports at the same time as other schools, because that will give us more of an even playing field as we go into competitions. And it's important for all the athletes and students to get back into in-person activities. And we have spoken to most of the basketball players in our program, and we are all comfortable in coming back and doing in-person practices.
Thank you.
Gavin with wrestling.
Hi, my name is Gavin Peterson, and I'm a sophomore, and I wrestle for the varsity bomber team. For me, it's important to get back to our sports because sports are a part of us as who we are as athletes. And it's not only the competition that we look forward to, it's the practice and the teams and the coaches, as well as the school that helps us be the best version of ourselves. And right now, all those things are missing from our lives. If Cannon Falls will not allow sports to start on January 4th, I feel like I can speak for other athletes and myself that we will find and look for alternatives for practice and competition if different towns and even out of state, when what we really want is just the opportunity to compete for the Bombers. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. That's all of them, Bob.
Okay, does anyone else from the public wish to speak at this time? Okay, moving on down, consideration to approve the finance report. This back to Josh. Mr. Davison?
Yep, I'll just find my unmute button.
Yeah, yep.
Yep. So kind of go short and quick with a brief with the finance report, as we had the truth and taxation portion pretty number heavy, as well as we'll have the audit presentation to date, again, number heavy. So what you see here is the cash flow worksheet for the district. Currently I present through the end of February. The biggest portion in here, other than, we've got normal items that come out, are payroll, liabilities, as well as payroll, ideas payments, which are the funds we're receiving from the state of Minnesota, in regular bill. End of February, you'll see the 2017A, 2017B, 2016A. I don't know if I'm still working there. Those are all debt service payments and obligations. So you'll see our cash balance when it hits the end of January, beginning of February, significantly decrease. The important part, I guess, to notice there is that we've got enough or sufficient cash to maintain operations, make our debt service payments, and continue on going without any need to do any aid anticipation borrowing. So that's positive for the district, and really is the biggest thing to note in the cash flow coming forward for the next 2.5 months. As we go through the entire fiscal year, we do stay positive with cash flow, as we've discussed several times throughout the fiscal year so far. So it really is kind of the short and sweet version of the finance report. And if there are any questions, I'll certainly do my best to answer whatever you may have.
It is the short, sweet one, isn't it?
Yep.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Davison? If not, I would look for a motion to approve their finance report as shown.
I'll move to approve it. It's Bill.
I'll second.
Bill, seconded by Brenda.
Yep.
Further discussion. A yes vote will mean the approval of the finance report. Larry?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Bob, yes. That passes by a 6-0 vote. Consent agenda. Items under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted under one motion. In the event a board member wants to discuss any particular item, it will be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Jeff, you always like to recognize the gifts.
Yes, before I do that, the board should know that there's a blank space on the personnel items and there's a leave of absence that we need to fill in a name for an FMLA intermittent leave. And that is for Julie Rich.
Julie Rich, okay.
Yes, so as far as the donations for this month, we're happy to say that $200 from the Rotary was given to the Interact Club for holiday meals for 5 families. $120 was given by an anonymous person to the Interact Club for holiday meals for 5 families. $25,000 was given to Donald W. or given by Donald W. and M. Marilyn Anderson Foundation in memory of Dr. Lon Rudicelli.
Yes.
Jennifer, do you have a name?
Yep, Rudicelli.
Rudicelli, okay, thank you. Cannon Falls Elementary School furniture, projector, and screen for the IMC Commons. Jen, do you want to elaborate on that just a little bit?
Elaborate on what the money is.
Just what the furniture and the projector are and where they're going to be at.
Yeah, so if you've been in the elementary school, if you remember where the media center is at, and then right across from there, we have some tiered seating. And that's where we've had some of the board meetings. That's, yep. Okay. So you know how we have to pull down the little screen to do that with a old school kind of setup. So the idea when working with this family is, you know, we do have a need that tiered seating can fit up to a grade level and works really nice, especially in times for small groups. Yeah, so we looked at that as a need, and to be able to, if you remember, a PTO and the Ed Foundation and our booster-thon was able to get a projector and a screen for the other side of this for when we're in there for the gym, so we can do full school things. This would give us another space to do smaller groups. So very excited and thankful for this donation. So.
Thank you for being put on the spot there and being able to follow through on that, Jen.
No problem. Didn't know about that. I forgot it.
The next donation is $1,380 from Gary Miller. And this is given to their Cannon Falls Chamber Bucks for our teachers for the great job that they've done throughout the year. And finally, $3,000 from the state of Minnesota for the COVID relief for Cannon kids. So thank you to all of our donors this month.
Thank you. If you'd like to take just a moment to review the minutes from our November 23rd meeting, please do so. Otherwise, when you're ready, if you have questions, we can deal with them during the discussion period, but whenever you're ready, we can make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Kate.
I'll second. This is Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Now, other discussion about any items on there? If not, a yes vote would be to accept the consent agenda as shown. Bob, yes. Brenda?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Okay, that passes by a 6-0 vote. No old business. Under new business, we're going to hear from our new auditors for the first time. So I'll turn that over to Jeff.
Yes, we want to welcome Smith Shaber and their representatives tonight to discuss our audit for the 1920 school year. And Josh, do you want to take it from here and introduce our speaker?
Sure. It's been a kind of a wonky year just in general. You talk with the COVID stuff and trying to meet and work together, and then throw in changing accounting firms. And the transition to Smith Schaefer has been great. The people there to work with have been wonderful and easy to work with, and really made the process of changing an old dog's viewpoint to a new system pretty easy going forward. So I really appreciate their time. And we have Steve Salveson with us tonight to present the audit and the findings. Normally this is something that would be done probably in October. With some of the delays we had with the COVID and whatnot, it just kind of got pushed back. I think even Steve had mentioned we went through the draft presentation with admin or myself, and that he'd done more draft presentations in December this year than ever. So I apologize for it being as late. We'd like to have it done a lot sooner than this, but more than happy to introduce Steve here to do the audit presentation today. Thanks, Steve.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, my name is Steve Salveson. I'm with Smith Schaefer. We're a firm of about 100 employees. We have offices in Golden Valley, Red Wing here, and in Rochester. And we were tasked with doing the audit for this year. And as part of that, we have a PowerPoint we're going to go through. We see before you is actually the representation letter. That's just for probably Mr. Sampson and you, Josh, to review and sign. It's done annually with all audits. So I don't normally go through that. We just go through the PowerPoint. So what we did is a couple of weeks ago, we went through a draft, and you have the draft in your packet. Since then, we've updated quite a few things in that draft. We're down to one item, and we think we'll have that done here. Well, we'll have it done one way or another this next week. As far as the audit opinion, I can tell you for sure, we're wrestling with an item on the government-wide, which is nothing the district. We prepare all that. We take your fund statements, convert them to government-wide. In my mind, it's hokey, and a lot of us auditors aren't real happy with what we've done as CPAs. It's like, well, this is kind of corny, but it's something we got to comply with, and we have one issue hanging out there. But as far as your books, we call those the fund balance statements. That opinion is clean. There's no qualifications or nothing. Just want you to know that. So we're wrestling with another side. Last year, you did have a qualification for your OPEB for your activity. This year, we're looking at a possible qualification for activity and position. But again, it doesn't affect your books, which is really the opinion you want. And we're trying to work around on the other side, on the government-wide. So we'll get that handled one way or another this next week. So everything else is done. We've put in Josh's comments. They're in there. In your draft, you'll see them as yellow. You'll see a few other things. All that's done. We're down to one item, and we're in the process of fixing that. As part of every audit, we're government units for Minnesota, which schools, cities, and counties are, we're required to comply with Minnesota legal compliance. So the state of Minnesota puts out a checklist that we have to follow based on the organization type. And we didn't have any exceptions when we did that testing for your district. Also, as part of all audits, we're required to issue an internal control letter. So we do a review of your internal control system. We also do some walkthroughs and some other testing of it. And through all that, you had one finding, which is preparation of financials, which basically most districts and most governments have, because they have the auditors do that as a service. So we present that as a finding, but it's one that's very common. Matter of fact, 99% of all our nonprofits have that finding. So in most of our governments, we only have maybe one or two that don't have that finding. So that's very common. In most situations, they actually want us to do it anyway, because finding the time to do that is very cumbersome. So, and having the people available just to do that. Another item where, even though student activity during fiscal 2020 moved to the general fund side or under board control, which is one of the new accounting items, and it actually isn't effective till next year, but the state of Minnesota wanted all districts to do it this year, and that's done in your report. We still have to do some testing with the new MAFA manual, which is for student activity funds, and part of that is statement of purpose forms. And we did have 5 activities that were missing those forms, and that'll get taken care of this next year. Another item is, as part of all audits, we issue a letter to the board. We call it the audit committee letter. I don't remember if you have it in your packet or not, but is that in the packet, Josh? The draft of that?
No, I have not received that yet.
Okay, so and I couldn't remember if it got sent to you or not, but basically it just talks about you know, our responsibility with the audit, any compliance issues. Did you have any significant accounting policies? And we did do the change for the student activity fund, so that's listed in there. That's GASB 84. Did we have any significant estimates for the government-wide? We had, you know, depreciation when we record that in those statements. That's a significant estimate. When we do the OPEB and pension liabilities, that's a significant estimate. As far as the regular books, the biggest thing is the estimate of the general and special ed receivables. We all know those will get final till sometime in the next year. Did we have any difficulties? No. Did we have any corrected misstatements of significance? The answer is no. We consider a lot of the accounting assistance that we do as bookkeeping service or accounting assistant service. So we don't report any adjustments. We kind of do it as a team effort. We find something, we make sure that we show it to Josh, he approves it, and it gets entered that way. Do we have any disagreements? No. And is there any other issues or findings or items to disclose? And the answer is no. That's basically what that letter says. You'll get that in its final form when we final out the audit. And it's just a 3-page letter. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So we always start our presentations with ADM. And the reason being is all our revenues and expenditures should follow the ADM. So if our ADMs go up, we'd expect everything to go up the same percentage relatively, or if they go down, we expect them to go down. So you can see for the year from 19 to 20, we had an increase of about 8, and that's about 7%. So we'd expect things to move accordingly. Next slide, please. This is the revenue for all funds. So this would be the general fund, the food service fund, the debt service fund, and the community service fund. So as you can see, our levies are up a little bit. That's primarily our debt levy. And, you know, that's our collection on the levy. And that'll go down probably the next year. And then our state aids are up about 500,000. That's primarily our gen ed aids, special ed, and our literacies. So you can see federal aids went up a little bit there, about 75,000. That's primarily the summer food service program because of COVID. And you see other revenue, basically the same as the prior year. So next slide, please. And this just shows, like you saw in your taxation in one of your other presentations, you know, what is our reliance? And, you know, state aid, of course, is the bulk, property taxes is the rest, and then our other revenues, fees and such are most of the rest. And you can see they're basically the same for the last 2 years. So next slide, please. This just shows our levy history. You can see that OPEB debt service that was paid off, so that's gone. And other than that, you see our general, as Josh was showing before, is dropping a little bit. And then our debt is dropping a little bit too. So next slide, please. This will be the expenditures, all funds. And I'm going to go through some of the highlights here. So you see the support, the second group there. So it's 5 years of data represented by the different colors. That's up about 164,000, and a big portion of that is OPEB stays pay as you go. The state pension, which is an adjustment the state makes us post. It's an in and an out, so there's revenue equal to that number, but the number goes in that slot. That's almost 50,000. And then fees for service is the rest of that increase. You see the next group there, the regular instruction. Mainly that was textbooks, payments to Minnesota schools. And the largest part of that is in 2020, we now include our student activity funds. So the expenditure is in that regular instruction number versus in the past it is not because of the change in accounting, but it's also in the revenues. So both sides of that are in our expenses and revenues. And that number for the expenditures is 341,000. So if you take that off, that drops almost 2/3 of the way down toward that blue line, which is the prior year. So just wanted to point that out. Vocational is about the same. Special ed, you can see, is up about 8%, and the revenue actually went up 9%. Community ed is down 181,000. That was primarily employee service, fee for service, and of course salaries and benefits of programs that got cut because of COVID and everything else. And that's about it. The rest of them are pretty close to each other for the years. And I don't have any comments on those. Next slide, please. And so this is our general fund overall. And you can see it did have, the revenues didn't quite match up with the expenditures, but they're pretty close. And they've been that way for the last, well, almost 5 years. So, and we also did a transfer of 90,000 to the community ed fund. So, or the food service fund. And so that's actually in the transfers and other that you see there, the little bumps there off to the right. And that affects the general fund balance. So we'll see that on the next slide, please. And here you see the general fund balance, and you see that jump in restricted, that's your student activity funds. So at the end of the year, that was 280,000 versus they weren't in there last year. But then also in your restricted is your separation and retirement. That's 350, and the prior year that's 375. With that big jump in the restricted is your student activity that comes new for the accounting change. You can see our unassigned and assigned went down in about 90,000, which almost matches up to the transfer we made. So next slide, please. And again, here's the food service. So food service got the transfer, 90,000. Their sales are down 125, but the federal is up about 60 from the summer program. And of course, we'd expect the sales down with COVID, and that's primarily our meal sales themselves because of COVID. So next slide, please. And of course, then you see the fund balance. So basically, we've been funding it to break even, and the 15,000 you see there, that's our inventory. So, you know, our non-spendable minus 15 matches our positive 15 for inventory. So next slide, please. Community service. You can see basically for the year, it pretty much broke even, lost about 10,000, a little over 10,000. So that was pretty good. And we primarily, like I said earlier, cut salaries and stuff like that to get it down to match up better. So next slide, please. Of course, then it has various restricted and unrestricted balances. And right now it's in a $90,000 deficit, but only grew 13,000 from the year before. So, and this is actually pretty common with most rural districts. All the ones that we do, they're all in this situation because I think it just shows a commitment of the district and the rural, especially to be committed to these types of programs. And the revenue never covers them. That's just the way it is. So next slide, please. And of course, then the debt service. And basically the last 2 years, you can see, as Josh mentioned earlier, you know, we levy, we pay, and that's really all it is for debt service. Go to the next slide. And you can see last 3 years, the fund balance is basically the same. I'm assuming you did a refunding or something in 18. That's why you have a large amount in 17 and went away in 18. And that's what shows up on the previous slide. Next slide, please. Now we get into where we take the expenditures, divide it by the ADMs, and in theory, if we're managing perfectly, we'd have a straight line. And if you look at that, it's actually pretty close. And they kind of, right around that 1,000 mark. Well, then off to the right, you see the 2019 for districts of our size and the state average. So we're really close to that. And so I think you've done a great job there. Next slide, please. And of course, this is the most important in some of our district presentations. This is the only slide they have, plus the ones before. This is the only stick slide they have. The rest of them, they're like, who cares? And they look at this one. And one thing I want to point out to this one, that it looks kind of skewed, but you got to remember, and I thought about this afterwards, I thought, well, we should have probably put another item in that parentheses there. We should actually take out the student activity. So the student activity is in 2020, but it's not in the other years. So if I take that number out of there, the number goes down to 5192, which you can see is really close to the prior year and the averages. So I'm thinking we'll change that in the future, and we'll say up on the top, excluding student activity funds, because that's your Fund 30. And then it's more comparable to the rest. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with the state average and the other districts going forward, if they're going to start including that or not, or if they're going to keep pulling that out, because in 19, it's not in there. So just wanted you to be aware of that. Next slide, please. And this is the general fund as a whole. So if we take the general fund expenditures, divide by the ADMs, these are the numbers we get. And again, if I take out the student activity out of that total, I get 11,759, which you can see is pretty close to the prior year, and also below the state average. So it'd be interesting to see how the state reports that in future years, and what's actually in there. But basically really close. Next slide. So in summary, we did have expenditures over revenues by 74,000, and we do have an unassigned fund balance of about 2%. As Josh said, your policy is to get to 8 to 12, which we recommend that too. Food service did have excess expenditures over revenues of 90, and we did transfer from the general fund, which also reduces our fund balance to cover that deficit. And in community service, expenditures exceeded revenues by about 13, and it does have a deficit balance of 90,000. That's all I have. I want to thank those of you, Superintendent Sampson and Josh and Bob, and who suffered through the draft meeting with me. That takes about an hour. And I look forward to serving you in the future, and I appreciate your time. Any questions?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we need to make a motion and a second for the audit presentation to accept the information given to us.
I'll move to accept the information.
Brenda on the motion.
And second.
I'll second.
Yep.
You lost, Larry. Bill on the second. Any other discussion? A yes vote would be for the acceptance and approval of the 20 audit. Bob, yes. Brenda?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
That passes by a 6-0 vote. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Consideration to approve the final levy certification payable to fiscal year 21. Mr. Sampson?
Yes, every year at the last meeting of the year, we need to set the levy. And when the board decides that it wants to make a motion in a second, we will need to include the exact number. We just can't use set the levy max. So we will need to include the actual number. And Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at this number right here.
Correct. 4,328,225.91.
And that is the number from your presentation.
Correct.
And so this will be what needs to be approved tonight to set the levy, and this is what we're recommending. Now, obviously, you could under levy, but you can't go over that. I would recommend setting it at that level.
Okay. Folks, do we have a motion to approve the final levy certification in the amount shown of $4,328,225.91? Look for a motion to approve.
This is Bill. I'll make the motion to approve the proposed tax levy of $4,328,225.91.
Thank you, Bill. A second?
I'll second. It's Katie.
Thank you, Katie. A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Once more, a yes vote would be to approve the proposed tax levy at $4,328,225.91. Larry?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Bob? Yes. That passes by a 6-0. I wonder why they changed from the max levy statement to a particular number.
Well, I know that changed a few years ago. In September, you can levy the max because they haven't settled what those numbers are yet. And so, by December, for the December board meeting, they do have those numbers in the levy report. And that's why they want you to name exactly how much you are going to levy.
I guess that makes sense. Number 3, consideration to approve the World's Best Workforce Plan Doc 1920 summary statement.
Yep, the summary statement, the plan is here, and that is on our website. Due to COVID, which seems to be a common statement, a lot of these plans have gone unfinished because they required MCA testing data to look at the goals. And so a lot of these updates will seem very similar to what they were last year, but nonetheless, we do have to provide an opportunity for the board to approve this plan that's been vetted by our principals and the goals set forth within their building, and then also the summary statements that we had to turn into the state last week as well. So, and a lot of these goals we had to check that we could not fulfill them because we did not have any testing due to COVID. So, any questions on the World's Best Workforce and the summary?
If none, I would look for a motion to approve as shown.
I'll move to approve, Bob. It's Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Second?
I'll second. It's Katie.
Katie, thank you. A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, a yes vote would be for the approval of the World's Best Workforce Plan and the 1920 summary statement. Bob, yes. Brenda?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Katie? Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
That passes by a 6-0 vote. Okay, discussion of and potential action on the Minnesota State High School League athletics.
These next two items are in reaction to the governor extending out the potential start date for the winter activities. He originally had a governor executive order that ended last Friday, the 18th, and a few days before that, he extended that time period out till January 4th. And the intent at the time was to bring this item to the board so that the board could decide if we were to reopen activities at this point. Obviously, we are in distance learning at this time, but as I mentioned earlier in the board meeting, the intent is to return back to at least a hybrid learning model on January 11th if our data holds as it currently does right now. Questions on this? Or do you want to hear? I have Pam Wolf with us, who is our district nurse. I have Reed Olson with us. I have other members of our COVID advisory committee. I know Bill and Larry sit on that. And so if you have questions, this would be a good time to ask them, I guess. One of the things, and I know it's been mentioned before, is that our teams this past fall did a great job of following our rules that have been set up and the practices that we've had implemented for safety. And they've actually had a really good year without being taken out and have to sit out for 2 weeks as a quarantine. So I do think we do have capable student athletes that are able to follow along with our program, and hopefully that would continue if the board does allow us to move forward on January 4th.
Jeff, this is Brenda. I had a question about, could you explain the shortened quarantine period a little bit more? There's a 7-day and a 10-day period now, and how that would affect the sports teams.
Sure, I will start to explain it, and then Pam, if I miss something, please feel free to step in. The governor, I think it was last week, maybe even late the week before. Currently, if students are deemed a close contact, they need to be, or previously they had to be in quarantine for 14 days. Moving forward, there's going to be choices of 7 days or 10 days, depending on if you want to get tested or not. And that would reduce the quarantine time to either 7 days or 10 days, depending on the situation. However, this would not apply, and according to the guidance, to athletes and FIED class participants who would still need to be out for 14 days due to the fact that they would have to mask and, more importantly, keep social distance throughout the 14 days. That is a requirement for the 7-day and the 10-day period. Did I hit that on the head, Pam?
So they could come back to school in 7 or 10 days, but not participate in the sport for 14 days.
Yep, they could sit off to the side in both the athletic practices and in FIED classes.
Okay.
Pam, would you like to comment at all?
Jeff pretty well covered it. It doesn't, the 14-day quarantine does continue to apply to people who are exposed by their household members, just because the risk with that kind of exposure is much higher of ending up positive. But otherwise, no, the 10-day quarantine is for people who choose not to test. And you still have to, you know, there's certain criteria you have to meet to do that. You have to keep masking, maintain social distance. And if you develop any symptoms at all, then you end up staying home again with those. And then the 7-day quarantine is if somebody chooses to test 5 to 7 days after their exposure, and they can provide a copy of that negative test result, then they can return. And also the same things, they have to mask and maintain social distance and monitor for symptoms. And if they have any symptoms at all, then they need to stay home.
Reed, how do you how do you inform the coaches, or how do you meet with coaches and players to let them know the importance of masking and other issues there?
So this fall I went to our programming, but the big really caveat there is that I've met with both Pam and Alex, our trainer, to go over our protocols as to how we're going to, take a look at everything. Alex, our trainer, has really done a great job of compiling basically an attendance list, if you will, and a thermometer, so that they're doing their contact tracing, so that they can go back by the date and who was there, etc., what that looks like. So Alex and Pam have both done a tremendous job there in taking care of that and making sure that we're following all those protocols. So I get the guidance that I get from the high school league. Pam is getting it from MDH, and we coordinate, and Alex has done a really good job of studying above and beyond. And knock on wood, we've been really fortunate and really lucky here in our fall programming of not having to quarantine any of our teams.
We have one head coach in our midst here, and he wears a couple of hats. Tonight he was our finance man, but as a head coach, can you make any comments on how you feel it'll go, and what you will use as your determining factors in practices and distance?
First of all, I guess like the thing I like that what Amelia had brought up is the mental health part of it. And I think that the athletics part, while it's extracurricular, is such a huge part of what these kids do as their whole part of being educated through our district. And I think that, having these kids in a gym, being able to do things that are, maybe it's a stress reliever for some, maybe it is just a true passion that they love. For me, I'm glad to have guys that love basketball and want to be into a gym. But I think part of that too is that stress reliever and that mental health break that I think a lot of them need. So I was glad that point was brought up. But in terms of practice and what we would do, it'd just be another requirement of what we do in practice. I require guys to wear practice gear every day in practice, be uniformed up when we have games, and if they're not, there are consequences. So same thing would be with the masking. We'll test them every day as part of our normal routine of what we do to make sure that we stay as safe as we can, or even more so that we're keeping kids, giving them that opportunity to be able to compete and participate in athletics. So, I think guys want to practice. I think they want to be able to play their games, especially guys that, are seniors and have done this now since they were in kindergarten, first, second grade, and want to have that opportunity. And I think as adults, sometimes we put brakes on things to make sure that we're doing in their best interest. And I think we got to trust them to do what's in their best interest sometimes as well. And if they're doing the things that they need to do, and we're doing the things that we need to do, I think that the fall part of what happened in our programming is a good indicator that we can hopefully do the same in the winter.
Jeff, we deal with high school league athletics. We certainly have more to do than athletics at this school and extracurricular. What's going on with that? Or Reed can answer that as well. We've got, other extracurricular athletic there other than athletics.
Okay, our activities?
Yes.
What you're asking. Okay. As of right now, both speech and one act play are virtual throughout the culminating portion of their season. High school league does not regulate their regular season. They only regulate their postseason as to what that's going to look like. So that will remain virtual, which has already been taking place. And robotics is another one that's set to start in January. So they would start virtually unless we are having our programming in person.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered that question or not, but that's how I interpreted your question.
Good interp. Board members.
Reed, I had a question. You had mentioned earlier about the scheduling, and you haven't really gotten an answer from the State High School League. So January 4th versus January 11th, how do you really see a difference between those dates beginning? to start practice and games.
Bill, I don't know if I see a difference there. I was very happy to see it go from December 21st to January 4th, just for maybe everybody's comfort level of the Monday going into the Christmas and New Year's break. And maybe that's setting us back a little bit. So the January 4th, I feel much better about. I think that gives everybody within the state essentially an opportunity. I'm not saying that it's full-fledged, but an opportunity to be on level playing field, if you will, of everybody having a consistent opportunity to start on the 4th. There's going to be pauses. There's going to be outbreaks, just like what we saw this fall. I think if we can do our part and continue to have the luck that we had this fall, then I feel good about our protocols and how we handle it. To share with you, I heard several times here throughout the fall about how maybe we were doing things more strict, more stringent than what others did when they traveled for volleyball or football. And I guess I take pride in that, knowing that perhaps we can draw a correlation of not having to quarantine anybody, any of our teams for that. So I would anticipate that we would follow the volleyball model, if you will, of 2 spectators per participant, but that guidance hasn't come out yet. But in regards to the 4th or the 11th, if our numbers are going down based off of, and the Thanksgiving data is reflected in that, then I feel good about the 4th, Bill.
Other questions or comments?
I think that I think these kids have been through a lot in the last year, and they I think they deserve to get a little bit of controlled normalcy back. What I like about being able to start on the 4th is they're starting with everyone else in the state, if that's what the governor's allowing, to trust the science and you know that it's safe to do so. I also like the fact that if my kids are going out and they're in a controlled environment with a coach and they're following protocols, and they are still getting some very much needed mental release and companionship outside of their households that they've been stuck in for the last couple months. And I think that it's a safe way to move forward, and it's only a week ahead, but they'll be feeling like they're on the same playing field as everybody else.
Anyone else?
I agree with what everybody's saying. We were fortunate to keep things fairly normal this fall with athletics and academics. My biggest concern about going back into athletics is the potential for it to put in-person learning in jeopardy. We were lucky, maybe there won't be any issues, but I think we talked about mental health for the athletes. There are a lot of kids in our district that don't participate in athletics that are suffering as a result of having to do distance learning and really need to be back in the classroom. And I just want to make sure that we're prioritizing education and with athletics as an add-on and not vice versa. I don't think we've done that, but because this would be starting before we'll be back in person learning, I want to make sure that we're keeping our priorities in mind.
I agree with you, Anna, and I really struggled with the fact that we would be allowing athletics before going back to school. I had a real tough time with that when I was thinking about it. And I guess personally, I would like to see, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I looked at the governor's statements, it was just practice only is what's being started on the 4th. But I'm not sure, but I would like to see that we don't have any spectators at our sports until we can be back in the classroom, because I feel like the biggest hindrance is the community spread right now, and not necessarily, it's not within our buildings, it's not within our programs, but it's that community spread part, and that's where our super spreaders are and everything. So I guess I don't see there being a problem of the kids being able to gather and see and be in the groups and practice if they're doing it safely and following protocols. However, I don't want big groups gathering until we can be in the classrooms as well. I guess if that makes any sense.
Yep, that's just where I'm coming from, because I absolutely understand the benefits that our student athletes receive as part of being on their teams, but we do have a lot of other students that they really need to be in the classroom. And I want to make sure that we're thinking of that and putting that ahead of, I mean, I don't have a problem with practicing, and we obviously are, I don't know if we're being asked to vote on something tonight. I don't know that until we have a schedule of what games are going to look like and what the protocol around those, what protocols around that is going to be. I don't want to approve anything like that. I mean, I'm fine with practices and keeping things contained for now, but I don't want to say that we're ready to go for a full season without seeing what that is actually going to look like.
Well, Katie, I thank you for bringing up the community spread, because I think from the COVID advisory committee meetings, some of that information doesn't always get out to the public. And so we really saw that the numbers that were growing in Goodhue County were far greater than what was happening in the schools. And so my message to the committee was, thank you for the teachers and the administration to really press the protocols for our students and the safety of the students at the school. And so we've done a really good job. And Pam, you're in that bunch too. And so they've guided us to keep school in place. Yes, we eked out the last few weeks going into the holiday. I think the timing was perfect for us. And the positive coming out of Thanksgiving, it really was that we didn't see the spike that everyone really expected. And hopefully the community can continue that process through Christmas and New Year's. And so that we don't have that continuation. Everything's dropping. And the students really have stepped up at school and in activities. I think if you take the position of just segregating sports, it's not just sports, it's activities. Kids want to be included in anything that they have involvement with. And so my question really around the 4th through the 11th was, is it going to make a difference? Not necessarily, but the reality of it is it does get kids out of the house, gives them exercise, which we're all interested in. As far as the scheduling of how you get students there is probably my biggest concern. So, I mean, Reed, you can probably speak to that a little bit. At the varsity level and the JV level, it's likely that kids are going to be able to drive or walk. So that's my thought.
As far as what we're asking the board for tonight, we're asking the board for permission to begin on January 4th, obviously, because we don't have any meetings between now and then. Reed doesn't really know what the games or what the guidance is going to be from the State High School League, and we can certainly give you an update at our January 11th meeting on that as well.
So,
Jeff, do you have anything from the COVID advisory committee, like what they recommend?
The COVID advisory committee was charged with learning model data. Okay. We haven't really talked about sports. Pam and, we have some members from the COVID advisory committee on here that has some background knowledge along with Pam, but that really wasn't their charge.
Okay.
Larry, you're on the committee, but that wasn't your charge, but you do have a background in just this. Any comments from you?
Yeah, I guess mine is like they were talking about the community spread. We just aren't seeing the spread in schools. And since Thanksgiving, we didn't see the spike that everybody was projecting. Even at my workplace, going into Thanksgiving, we had huge numbers. Coming out of it, we've got none. So I think that's kind of the drastic decline we're seeing. And with schools, it's just not there. I think the schools and the athletics, that's not where the spread was. And I think it's probably safer for kids to be in school right now than it is for them to be at home and being out in the community running around.
Especially our older kids. And I don't know, from a personal standpoint, I saw more kids taking more precautions because they did not want to miss playing their sport or their activity than when they're not in it. So I don't know, they just do a little bit better of a job of being protective, and I don't know, just something to think about.
So the item on our agenda is discussion potential action on Minnesota State High School League athletics. So this action item would include a recommendation, a motion, and a second, or not, to begin our practices for our athletics on January 4th. Now we can continue discussion as you wish, but we should probably get a motion and a second on the floor in some form right now.
Well, I would make a motion. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would make a motion to allow them to start practicing on January 4th.
That's Katie.
I would second.
Bill?
That was
Larry.
Larry. Okay. We have a motion and a second. We can continue discussion if you'd like.
Yeah, I think just going back to my question, probably more directed to Reed, is, would we have any issue with kids getting to the school if we start on the 4th versus the 11th? I know it's a tough question.
Yeah,
but
maybe. I guess the only thing that keeps popping back in my head is that during the hybrid model,
right,
half of our students had to get to their fall practices. So it's going to fall on the parents. It's going to fall on, older siblings that can drive, for sure.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And just to answer Katie's question from earlier. So right now we're scheduled. We don't know what that date would be where our first competition would be. We're speculating as ADs, as we're trying to revamp schedules for something right now, that we could speculate that could be the January 14th, based off your traditional model of here's your first day of practice, here's your first day that you can compete, etc. So anything before January 14th, we have worked on rescheduling. Anything on January 14th after, we're trying to keep as is right now. If it gets to the point where that start competition date becomes later than January 14th, we will probably blow up all of our schedules and start over for the third time. But so we wouldn't have any congregating at the gyms or practices for spectators. We wouldn't have any of that, nothing before we return to hybrid. The earliest that I would say that we could do anything would be the 14th, but we have not yet received that.
Reed, would you say that they would probably run close to the same amount of events per week like they did in volleyball? With limiting
right
it?
now, as of right now, we get 2 per week. With the last 2 weeks of regular season, that we could have a third in each of those. So yes, and that was exactly what volleyball was.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for our student athletes to begin practice on January 4th at the earliest date as recommended by the governor. So
just so that I understand before you guys vote, you guys are voting on practice and you want to bring games back to the 11th meeting?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'd like to have more information before voting on that.
Okay, so we won't start games anyway before the 11th, but we can bring information that Reed has collected from the State High School League on that.
Sure.
Okay, a motion and a second on the floor. A yes vote would be to begin practices on January 4th.
Excuse me, Bob. So Jeff, I guess I'm not sure I understand why we would have to vote on the 11th for games. We would be just basically voting tonight to let them start on the 4th and then follow any guidance, like Reed was saying, that their scheduling for games can't start until so many days of practice and eligibility. So would we really have to bring this back to the board on the 11th?
If we're back in school.
But that's what I had heard here. I mean, the board can do whatever they want to. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on what people's intentions were. We don't have to vote on games.
Yeah.
We don't have to bring it back to the board on the 11th, but I had heard that somewhere in the conversation that that's what somebody wanted. Now,
yeah, that was Anna's concern, you know, kind of just getting started with practices. But, you know, there's protocol, I guess, and from what Reed's saying, following the state high school league. So we're not going to be playing games on the 11th or the 12th. So I think if the motion needs to be adjusted, I would like to start over and just follow the guidance of the high school league.
Oh, sure.
So Robert's rules, you could do a friendly amendment on that. Bob,
Yeah.
if you need some help with that.
Let's, we've had these before. Katie, would you amend your motion to include following the guidance of the Minnesota State High School League and Walls?
Yes.
Larry, would you second that amended statement?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to begin practice on the 4th and thereafter follow the guidelines set forth by the powers that be above us. A yes vote would be for that continuance. Bob, yes. Brenda?
Yes.
Anna?
No.
Yes.
Katie? Bill?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Okay, that passes by a 5-1 vote.
And I just want to say that I only voted no because of the amendment. I don't feel comfortable with just moving forward without discussing it in conjunction with what we end up doing as a district for in-person learning. I was fine with starting practice on the 4th, but I don't feel comfortable saying that we'll just do whatever is laid out without determining whether or not that's what's best for our district.
Point taken.
Thank you.
Yep. Moving forward then, the discussion of potential action on youth athletics. This is
prior to us going into distance learning, we were starting to allow groups to come back into our building, with like the Ed Foundation, the Senior Center to open, and then also youth athletics. We had a target date of what we were looking for them getting started up for their winter. And then that kind of fell apart. And I guess I would like to get back on that same track again if the board is okay with that. Not only really for youth athletics, but more for the Ed Foundation meetings happening also, and also opening up the Senior Center. With restrictions put on the Senior Center, they would be able to use the entire building. It would be more of the 2 rooms that they are allotted. So I guess the vote for this would be for the youth athletics as defined as the elementary aged athletics associations to come use our facilities, and then the Senior Center opening up and the Ed Foundation group being able to use our auditorium for meetings as nonprofits.
Just
two separate?
A question on youth athletics. our head coaches in their high school athletics have directives that they pass down to their junior high, and they get directives from Reed as well. What care would be taken for the youth programs when many of the coaches are dads who may not have a background? More of a question than anything else.
We've done a good job this fall working with the youth athletic programs and creating plans, safety plans that they need to submit to Reed's office before they can use our facilities. And each of those plans have to follow certain protocols that meet state guidance. And that is one area that Reed has worked with them, and I'm sure if the head coaches like Josh or Steven in basketball would work with the Youth Athletic Association as well to help give them ideas on what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. I don't know if Reed wants to add to that or not.
Yeah, correct. CFY's already done that for programming in the past. So yeah, it won't be any different. We're talking CFY, Matt Rats, and like Jeff said, Ed Foundation and Senior Center. And we already have Senior Center, we already have theirs.
So action that we're taking on a number 5 would include use of the facilities by both our Senior Center people and youth athletics, and the beginning of youth athletic practices at the same time. Is that a January 4th date as well?
Yeah, I don't know if they would be able to get in starting then, because Reed has a whole bunch of rescheduling to do. And so I'm sure that probably wouldn't start till later in the month. And I lost Reed on my screen here, so I can't see if he's shaking his head or not. But my guess is that's probably the case.
Yeah, we would need to get that at a later start date so that our current programming will be able to solidify their practice schedules. Hopefully by that time we've got the game schedules taken care of, and then we can let those organizations take a look at our facilities.
Are we allowing less people into the facilities when the other kids are practicing, or how is that working?
What do you mean less people?
Like, I mean, like in the past, like normal times when it wasn't the pandemic, the gym, all of the areas would be being used in the field house at the same time. I mean, are we staggering timings, or?
We would need to follow guidance on
how many people can be in it?
Absolutely.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And there wouldn't be any, I'm guessing, large tournaments being held here either, because that would completely break state guidance. And so that needs to be really looked at by their organization, and they understand that as well.
Okay.
And the people, the leaders that I've talked to in those organizations, they understand that they're going to have to restructure how things have been done in the past.
Yeah, and I think talking to Josh a little bit earlier about this today, but I would think that we would create some kind of a lag window in between our early and late schedule of a 10 to 15 minute enter in through door 12, exit through door 13, much like we did for volleyball. You know, say varsity's got one end of the gym, JV's got the other, and then you use the field house for C and 8 and 7. So basically we can stay within those pods, if you will, onto those courts and maximize our facilities and our opportunities there for those groups. So that, I think that would solve quite a bit for us. We're ahead of what others get just because of our facilities.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm a little confused on what our youth athletic statement would be.
Yeah, it seems like maybe the senior center, or use of the senior center and the Ed Foundation might be a separate motion from the youth athletics. Does that make sense? Or
is this more about access to facilities?
Right.
And
group access to
it's just
facilities.
more about access to the facilities. Okay.
Okay, so would we could we keep that on the same motion? And if so, Anna, would you say that again to expand?
I think what we're talking about is approving access to facilities for certain groups. I don't know if we want to list them out because something else might come up where group wants to use it. I don't know.
Should we just call them like outside groups or?
Well, the intent when we looked at this in the fall was to start with youth athletics. Basically it was the nonprofit groups and the groups that supported the school district that are nonprofit, like the Ed Foundation,
Yeah,
Senior Center,
that makes sense.
Youth Athletics, starting with those groups first and then slowly expanding to those outside rental groups that are not nonprofit. We don't want to open it up to outside organizations just in general, because then we'll have a whole hornet's nest here. So starting with those really localized groups and then expanding from there slowly was the thought process in that in the fall. And yeah, that's a badly worded agenda item, so I apologize for that. So it is more than just the youth athletics. It is for the senior center usage and for the Ed Foundation to use our auditorium for their meetings.
So we should probably just list out all three of those.
Or not confine us to a finite number of 3.
Nonprofit groups that support the district, such as, or you could just list them.
Yep.
And list those 3.
Okay.
Have access to the.
Who would like to make that all-encompassing motion?
I'll make the motion.
What is the motion?
That was it.
I would love it if you'd tell me again so we can make
a motion to allow access to facilities to nonprofit groups that support our district, such as Youth Athletics, Senior Center, and Ed Foundation. Or including, or something like that.
I think the intent is there. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Can we? Yeah, it makes sense to me. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second. It's Katie.
Katie on the second. So we have a motion, the second on the floor to extend out the use of our facilities to the 3 described entities and others as they fit that description. Fairly correct? A yes vote would be to approve. Bob, yes. Brenda?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
That passes by a 6-0 vote. Well, we've had a lot on our agenda this evening. Congratulations for getting through that in a mere 2.5-hour time. We knew that it was going to be that way, and it didn't let us down. There's a lot of people that are listening to this and applauding the fact that their children can go back into extracurriculars. And they have to know from us that it's a very important issue because our kids' health is at stake here. And we take that into consideration very, very deeply. You've all had emails from people that were very gracious to us, but also very pointed in their requests that we begin. So we hear you and we're in support. The last non-agenda item is when we had the interview process with Mr. Sampson, that included Mike Dalton, and it was a very difficult time for all of us, new board members as well. And Mike is no longer with us. He was replaced by Mr. Robinson, who right away jumped into the COVID pandemic thing. This is Larry's last meeting this evening. And by assisting us with one of the biggest issues we've ever had in our school district, it fit right up his alley, right up where he is employed. And so we need to extend congratulations to Larry and a thank you for being on the board for this past year and some very difficult times. Larry, we extend a deep thank you to you.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thanks for serving.
Larry,
yeah.
Anything to say? Or you just?
Yeah, I just like to thank all you guys. I mean, especially the teachers. When we could get around and meet with them before all this started, I went around and met with quite a few of them. I want to thank them for their time. Thank you guys for your time. I learned a lot. I mean, there's a lot of going into this. I had no idea what a school board member did. I hope to someday probably be able to get back to it when time allots a little bit better, but thank everybody. Thank everybody on the board.
You did well.
Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
Okay, moving on down, you see what's next for us. It'll be our annual organization meeting. We'll review and approve some policies 2, 5, and 8, and approve our policy 104 school district mission statement. And anything else we can squeeze into that initial meeting, we will attempt to do with so many activities and things going on. I'm sure we'll add to that list. So I'd like to personally wish everybody a Merry Christmas in a very difficult time. I hope you have a good time with what limited family some of you or all of us should be exposed to. So I would look for a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I'll make the motion. This is Anna.
Anna, you win.
I'll second.
Seconded by Larry. Further discussion. All in favor of adjournment would be Larry?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Bob? Yes. That passes by a 6-0 vote. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone.